everyone. Welcome to Volume Up with me, Leslie Jespersen. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in. I am joined this week by April Boyd, psychotherapist. She focuses on love, loss, relationships, and helping everyone navigate all that stuff. Hi, April. How are you today?
Hello. Good. I'm excited to be here. This is such a fun show.
First of all, I want to just start, I guess, with why did you decide that this was your route? You're obviously a trained psychotherapist, and what kind of drew you to the love and relationship side of it?
Cool. So I guess two things. So first off, that's obviously something I've spent a lot of time in my own life trying to figure out. I remember even just, when I was younger, going through the entire self-help section and relationship sections of the public library back in the day. And yeah, that was something that I always just was really fascinated by. Personally as well, I also had a lot of crappy relationships over the years where, I learned lots of stuff from them. But I also learned about just how muddy and messy and, heart-wrenching that whole road can be sometimes too. And then I also just really came to see that, 9 times out of 10, even if somebody was coming to me and wanting to talk about their depression or wanting to talk about their anxiety or wanting to talk about their grief, the other thing that we were always talking about at some point as well is just really their love lives and their relationships and how things were going with their partner, or what they were missing in their relationship, or what they were looking for in their dating life. And so that's something that I've just kind of leaned into with a little more training and a little more, just made more space for that in my life and kind of owned it more formally.
Yeah. I think it's really cool when just in my own personal work journey and profession, you find yourself being called to something to specialize, and you didn't really plan it, but you're like, okay, this feels really good, and I feel like I'm helping a lot of people, and that's kind of how I landed myself here. So something that you mentioned on our first call that I think I really want to dive into is when coaches and entrepreneurs in general decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do. A lot of times it's hard for their partners to understand what the hell they're even talking about, to have that faith and that trust that an entrepreneur has to have, and navigating all of that and asking for support and hey, I might not make any money for a while. And so talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's something that I've just noticed that comes up again, from time to time when I'm talking to a woman who really is at a point in her life where she's thinking about making a change, and maybe that's a total career change or starting her own business. And there's a lot of ripples that I found really happen with that. So for instance, I remember talking to this one client one time, and she was really making this big right turn in her career, and it was the coolest change. She was going from something that was, had been that job that you do because you're kind of told that's a good, responsible job to do, but she never had any job for it, right? And she was really starting to go into this brave new direction of being like, I think I actually want to be a yoga teacher. I think that's the place I'm drawn to. And one of the things that she would talk about was how her partner, she really felt like he wasn't supporting her, and really, would be really frustrated and sometimes really angry with him that she wasn't getting the support from him. And it was interesting because as I kind of talked to her about that, what I was able to see was actually a lot of examples where he was not blocking her. He was not trying to block her from doing that thing. He just wasn't as excited about it as she was.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? And it was neat because I just kind of came to see how, I think that's how a lot of us really function, is it can feel so vulnerable and like we're on such new kind of thin ice in a way, where we're starting to branch into this new territory, that it's like we really want our partner to almost just transfer some of their confidence and enthusiasm to us, right? So that can help to buoy us. And I think, well, part of that's fantastic. At the same time, that might be asking a whole lot more from somebody than they're realistically going to be able to give you, especially if you're, for her partner had worked a very traditional kind of job where it was all about, doing the secure thing and self-sacrifice of just doing your 9 to 5 grind.
Right.
So, she was essentially asking him to get really excited about something that he had never pledged allegiance to in his own world, something completely foreign to him. And so it just kind of made me realize of how some of these things we almost kind of project our own fears onto our partner and say, you don't believe in me, when really what we just mean is, I'm freaking terrified.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have like all these light bulbs going off. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Wow. Just in my own personal life and the conversations and the situations that I have been in, that's really, really, so what would you say to somebody who might have also had those light bulbs go off watching this? Is it just like focus on your own shit, and is it just a matter of that?
Well, it's that for sure. And at the same time, I think we have to kind of really identify that need that's getting expressed when we're frustrated or mad at our partner, right? To be like, what is that you're actually needing? And in that case, for her, it was that she needed more support. It was that she needed more people who cheered her on. It was that she needed a little more like-minded people around her who could legitimately, be like, yes, I've been there too, and it's amazing, go for it, and here's the scary stuff about it too, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's that thing of saying your need is valid, but where else can you also get your need met so that your partner is not having to carry the weight of the world of giving you every ounce of that from their own self?
Yeah. And I think that can be applied in relationships to every situation. I know, like, after my divorce, I learned so much about, I was with my ex-husband since I was 15 years old, and I didn't know that I could be my own individual self. And I look back and all of the pressures that I put on him, that he put on me for our own happiness to fulfill those needs, that's an awfully big burden to put on somebody that is your partner. No matter what, I hate when people say that your partner, your spouse should be your everything and you're not complete without them, because I think that just sets you up for failure and just being really freaking disappointed all the time. And not to say that your partner shouldn't support you, but in this case that you're talking about, you have to find other people, and you have to find that within yourself, especially in that entrepreneur journey when, sometimes people are just not going to understand what it's like. And, thank God for social media, right? That we are able to find that support and find those groups of people who are going through it right along with us. Oh, that's so, I love that you talked about that, because I see so many people like just setting themselves up for disappointment. And again, that's not to say you shouldn't have standards, but you can't place all of that on one person.
Yeah, and it's that tricky kind of mix of like, yes, have some standards, and at the same time, have some human standards too, right? And I think that also kind of, puts that ball back to us a little bit to, one, kind of put some of these myths, I think, that we're often sold about what relationships are supposed to be like. Oh, you're supposed to be my everything. Can you imagine being on the receiving end of that? Like, that's a terrifying place to be. I'm your everything, right? Like, I want to be like, definitely one of the top 3 most important things, but to be
Yeah.
everything, ooh, like, God, that's intense, right? So Yes, I think it's kind of putting some of those myths and just those expectations, which really is cultural. When you look at it, we get told so much about, relationships are supposed to be your everything, that if you are with your right person, they're going to get it, they're going to click, they're going to know what you need. And we're really just setting each other up for so much disappointment and
Yeah.
anger.
And I think that also might segue into a topic that you might be well versed on, is communication and verbalizing what you need. Something that my mom told me, not in these words, but I just like, you gotta imagine that the person's just stupid and like not, they don't get hints. Like you gotta just come out and say what you want and what your needs are. And because otherwise, how do they know?
That's such cool advice from your mom.
Yeah, yeah.
That's such cool advice. Way to go, mom.
Anytime I would like be frustrated, and she's like, you gotta just say it. You gotta just say, this is what I am feeling. This is what I want. And, if that's not realistic, then that's something that you cross when you get there. But
That's really
the
cool.
communication factor, talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, and if I can, so if you don't mind if I just ask, so have you been able to really carry that with you? Do you find that you apply that and use that?
I do. I have to say, in my relationship now, we're complete opposites. And I do look sometimes, I'm like, how does this even work? Like, but we communicate so well, even if we're staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, like talking through real messy shit.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
halfway through, you're like, man, I don't know how this is going to end. Like, this is not good. But, if we don't fall asleep and resolve it in the morning, we're talking it out, and just, these are my needs that I don't feel are being met, and this is how I've been feeling for 3 weeks now, but don't tell you about, so it's just,
Yeah.
these are all
Yeah.
things that I have learned, and I
And I
really
think
think
that
it's
is,
what, yeah.
it's amazing because I think that's one of those things that sounds really simple, but is actually so hard for so many of us, because that's incredible to me that your mom was like, hey, here's the drill, right? Like you actually need to be the one to tell people, because I think what a lot of us kind of get, just generally from society as well, is this idea that like you don't want to impose and you want to be nice and you don't want to upset anybody or cause conflict. And so we kind of do this thing where we really hold back, which is actually something that, I find myself in session with my clients. I say all the time, did you tell your partner that? Right? Does he
Yeah,
know what
right.
you're telling me right now? And so many of the times they're like, no. And you're like,
Yeah,
well, why is that?
it's that,
And I
I think
think we're
it's that
often,
fear, and like you said, and this is, I'll try not to get too much on like a feminist kind of thing, but as women in our society, we've been told and taught, and just through our culture and media, like a sit down, shut up kind of thing. You don't want to cause waves. You don't want to create a ripple. And that really, it can kill you inside, especially if you're a certain kind of person like I am. I remember through a lot of my work with my life coach, my Ayurvedic nutritional counselor, like it's all intertwined. And she had to remind me, especially I'm a Leo, and like she's like, you are allowed to be big and loud and be seen and be heard. And it's crazy how even like my health changed after I stopped like being so scared of what people would think about me, or what the things that I would say, how that would be perceived, both business wise and in my relationships and in my friendships, for sure.
that's amazing. And I think, that doesn't surprise me in a sense, because I really think it's true that, how they say how you do one thing is how you do everything. It's so
Mm-hmm.
true. So if you're holding back in your relationships, you're probably holding back with your friends. You're probably holding back at work. You're holding back all over the place.
Yeah. And imagine
Mhm.
like all of that. Like I'm a very visual person. I like to like actually visualize what my body looks like, with all this garbage and all this stuff that I need to say being held in. And that can take it can be hard when people realize that they haven't been communicating, but like, then what? And that, I guess, is where, you know, working with someone like you would come in and be really helpful too.
Well, and sometimes what I see, it's an interesting topic because I think that's so true in that you do end up carrying that in your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff you don't say. And really, head and body are one system, right? We treat it like
Yeah.
it's two different things. It is one system. And it just reminds me of, I had this one client who was coming to me and we were talking about her anxiety. And yeah, she definitely had a lot of anxiety going on. And while part of that might have definitely been chemical, and, she's doing her work with her doctor with that, at the same time, what she would share with me was this relationship where she didn't feel like she could express herself. She wasn't okay with some stuff that was happening. And she felt like she had no real voice in that relationship. So every time that she would get mad, every time that there'd be a decision made that she didn't get input on, every time that she would be really frustrated with what was going on in her own house, all of that would just kind of get stuffed down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, where does all that energy go? Right? Like all of those things that you just kind of push down. And for her, she would walk around feeling it in her
Yeah.
body, in her system, in her chest pounding all day long. And you're like, there's this mountain of unsaid things and unmet needs. Yeah. And
It's like a 2-liter
sometimes,
bottle of soda that you're
right?
just shaking and shaking. And eventually when you do unscrew that, then you're like, hello, panic attack that sets me into the hospital or something. Or in my case, I was experiencing so much stress that I started fainting. Like you see in the movies when people get really excited, I would just like in a doctor's office that I was really nervous about, boom, down in the waiting room. And that's what, that was a big wake up call for me. Like, okay, I might, on the surface seem like I'm handling this totally fine. I did meditation today. I went to yoga yesterday. I am crushing it. And then your body's like, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's that kind of thing. And I think that often stops us from communicating because we do kind of hold this idea that we're supposed to be able to do it all and kind of just make it work. And we're not really supposed to be impacted. So it's crazy because so often, I notice myself just the same thing comes up when I'm talking to people again and again. And I experience it in my own world too, right? Because I think it's always that work in progress where really it's like that we second guess, okay, I'm mad about this, or I don't really feel off about what's happening here. And we do that real ping pong ball between like, but maybe I'm just being oversensitive. Maybe I need to be more flexible. Maybe I just, have something kind of wrong, right? And we do this ping pong ball instead of really just grabbing it and holding on to it and being like, what is this telling me about what's going on here, right? Like there's information here for me to look at.
Yeah. I love that you said that. And I think acknowledging your feelings. And I know that I 10 days before my period, I'm a little bit like off the wall. I know that. Everybody around me knows that. But there's also not really much I can do about it except allow myself rest, allow myself to feel these feelings, and maybe even use it as a channel to get things out that I am much to the dismay of the people on the receiving end sometimes. But honestly, just taking note of that and observing it and allowing it to be what it is instead of fighting it has really helped me just navigate all of those feelings for sure.
And I think that's so cool because I don't know if this applies to you, but, I think that's one of those, like our period and our PMS time is one of those times where we go, oh, okay, this is just my PMS.
Right.
But I kind of think most of the time, the stuff you're getting mad about or annoyed about is stuff you're getting annoyed about anyways.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily feeling it as like an 8 out of 10 in terms of that annoyance. Maybe last week it would have been like a 4, but I'm like, it's not like I'm walking around randomly mad about things that have never irritated me. Right? Not all of a sudden like, today I hate the color pink, right? Like that doesn't happen. It's like the things that like all are legitimate little irks. Doesn't mean you need to make a big deal about it, right? Not all of
Right.
those things need to be a battle. But I think, again, it is that kind of thing of like, is there some information in this for me?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit more about what you do. You have your clients and is it a lot of like video work, or tell me a little bit about what you do in general with that stuff?
Cool. So basically, I say men, women, and couples because I do end up getting some men that come to me, but by and large, it's mostly women and couples. And so as a psychotherapist, my work has really been with trauma and grief and loss and anxiety and depression. But more and more, it really is people want to take care of their relationships. They want to take care of that part of their lives. And it just makes so much sense. That's the home you live in. Our relationships are so the home we're living. And if that's off, every other part of our life is off. Like it's just what happens.
Absolutely.
So what I do is I meet with clients 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 over video sessions. And then I also have some programs that I'm putting together and that kind of thing too. So, but really it's the 1-to-1 work and 2-to-1 work that I'm spending most of my time doing.
And you find that I think technology is just amazing because we're able to talk today from, different sides of the world. And I'm sure you're able to, reach people and help people that you never would have had the ability to do in a traditional office setting.
It is. And I am so grateful for that because I had always had a video component, or I had for a number of years anyway, it's a video component to my work because I would often have people that, were really high achiever types, and they would be traveling a lot for work, or they'd be in one location and their partner would be in another location. And so that was really just a useful option to be able to give people. And then the other thing is that it's really freed me up to travel and move as my life has changed and as my own desire to roam around has changed. So yeah, it's been really freeing on all fronts.
I love that. I just got back from vacation, and I specifically did not do any work. I got to tell you, I regretted that big time because I came back and I was like, where am I at? What day is it? What projects was I working on? And I feel like if I would have just allowed myself like an hour a day to get some work done, I would have been able to like dive back into it. But now that like just tells me, okay, next time I travel, I have the ability to work from wherever. So why not?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm always kind of doing that dance as an entrepreneur as well, because you always have that option to be doing one more thing for one. And I think we hear so much about like, oh, take those breaks. You need to take those breaks. But it's funny. My brother-in-law said to me one day, because they were visiting, they were spending a couple of weeks here, and I was continuing to work while they were here. And he's like, do you ever take vacation? And I'm like, not really. Like I do, but I love what I do. And so because I love it and because I'm passionate about it, it doesn't feel like back in the day when I used to work for other people or I was doing work that I wasn't in love with, where you're like, ooh, come on 5 o'clock, right? Or come on Friday. Like, I don't have that feeling now. Really, it's kind of, it's more of like my life than a job. So yeah, I always kind of debate that as well between like, do you really just clear your whole calendar, which I think sometimes can be good for that creative space. But at the same time, I'm like, I like my work. I don't mind doing that.
Yeah, I definitely discovered that. And for sure next time. So where can people find you if they're interested in working with you or if they want to learn more? I know you're on Instagram at with Love April, right?
That's right. Yes, so it's with, cool. Yeah, it's with Love April with dots in there. And I'm at aprilboyd.ca. And then I also have the Love and Loss Project, which is my work for couples and women that have experienced infant loss. So that's where I have a lot of my free programs and that kind of stuff there for people too.
Awesome. Cool. Is there anything I could talk with you like all day. So thank you for taking the time and for reaching out. And I really enjoyed talking with you. Is there anything else that you would love my audience to know about you or the work that you do or how you help people?
No, I can't think of anything specifically with that. One thing I might encourage people to do, if they wanted to just kind of take this conversation one step further, is to just do a little experiment with themselves with the rest of the day. That when something does kind of flicker on their radar or cause them that bit of tension or frustration, if they just kind of grab that ball and hold that for a second and say, what is my need here? And what would this look like if you just let yourself hold that for a moment?
Without reacting right away, and without the, oh God, that's something that I have had to learn. I'm definitely a reactor, or I was. I've been really good at about doing that and stopping and acknowledging and also verbalizing, like, look, I need a minute, because I know that if I don't take a minute, who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. And it's, for the benefit of everybody to, I love that. That's an amazing takeaway. Thank you so much. You can find April Boyd on Instagram. I'm going to put all the links on this episode so you can check her out. And April, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And we'll have to do this again. This was fun.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Yay.